I try and sell Stamp, or the tagline I give it is it's production analytics for live events, which basically means I try and connect to all of the aspects that help make a theatre show. So lighting consoles, automation consoles, sound desks, anything, video. And then I will collect all of the data from them. And then I will put that onto the same timeline as a video recording, which should allow you to then play back that video recording. You know exactly what's happening when. And with that information, it kind of allows you to be able to pinpoint what happened, what was wrong during that tech rehearsal, or for 1984, what was wrong in the scene change. That scene change is manic, and it takes 30 minutes to reset. So, we couldn't keep on running this over and over again to work out, oh, that lighting cue is 0.5 of a second off.
Sure.
We literally would just link it up with all of the elements, run that scene change once, and we'll be able to say, okay, sound were too early, lighting were too late. We make the changes and run it, and almost every single time it will be like perfect the second or third time.
And because the software records a video and then physically stamps the lighting cue onto the video of when that lighting cue is triggered, that's what allows you to be able to make all those edits and tweaks and stuff, which is why we use it, and it's so brilliant. I think you're going to give us a little demo now. Is that right?
Yeah, I can give you a little demo.
Guys, we're going to do a screen share thing again, but it seemed to work okay this morning with Mr. Voller. So Sam, no one needs to open their software at home. A lot of you who are on Windows don't have it, unfortunately. But Sam, maybe you can ask him nicely and he'll make you a Windows version. But Sam's just going to give you a little blow by blow how it works, how you get it to talk to a console. You'll look at 6 maybe and see how we use it on that. So over to you, Sam. I'll turn my camera off.
Yeah, so I've got your questions here. Is everyone online? Yeah. I would say throughout this whole workshop, just keep on asking me questions. So I'll just keep on looking at the chat. Am I in the right chat? Yeah. And I'm also looking at Slack. So feel free to just keep peppering me with questions, and I will try and come to them as and when throughout the whole talk, really. How is he running EOS in a window? That's an ETC question, but that's fine. I'll answer it. You literally come into the shell here, go to settings, and then in there's a display it as a window. Okay, so for all those that are, you can play around with Stamp as I'm talking. If you are, I would say just open it up. And yesterday I literally released a new version because I noticed a bug that was bugging me when I was kind of demoing what I was going to do. So Stamp has auto updating, so you can literally don't feel that you need to go to the website all the time. Literally just check for updates, and it will tell you. So you should all be on 2.3.7. For those that have been running Stamp, it has a 14-day trial. During this pandemic period, I've now extended the trial to just allow you to play with it for as long as you want. For no charge. All you need to do is make sure that you're on a version 2.3.6 onwards, and then that will just kind of remove that trial. So Jason, potentially that is your problem. I'm not quite sure, but let me know. Anyway, so Stamp is a document-based application, which basically means it runs exactly like any of the other document-based applications that you would run on a Mac, Pages, Microsoft Word. Essentially, we have these kind of Stamp files. The big thing really people ask me about that is how do you deal with these files in terms of, do you have a file per show or do you have a file per day? I really don't mind. I usually kind of have a show file per day, and then every day I just put them in the folder. And that's how that works, really. So you can create new files, by just adding new, and you can see that these are just files, and they work very similar to how you would have experienced them in Mac. You've also got all of the options of saving and duplication, and you've got the kind of going back in time and picking a certain show file from a certain point in time. So you can do all of that. Essentially, if I just save this to the desktop, you'll see. So that's our stamp file. Now, a stamp file, will this ever be available for Windows PC? I wouldn't say never. I would just say it's unlikely to happen in the next year or two. I could talk for days about why that won't happen, but maybe we'll talk about it later. A lot of it is to do with kind of support. And also, when I started building this, all of my friends and the majority of the market are running with Mac. So it meant that I could just produce a decent product for a specific platform and know exactly that it works for that platform. Whereas if I was developing for Windows, there's a lot more testing that you need to do, a lot more work that needs to be done. It really shouldn't be just tick a box and export. So that's why I didn't do it that way, really. So we got a stamp file. The first thing to really talk about is that a stamp file is this endless timeline, which basically means that when you make a stamp, every stamp has a timestamp that relates to a real time. Now, for those that haven't even tried before, to make a stamp or to make the first kind of type of stamp, a note stamp, just put your cursor into the text box at the bottom, and then you can just make a note of any type. So you could say something like "light's too dim." You can see that this is a note stamp because it's got this little icon. All stamps have a color. You can change the color by right-clicking on the row, and you can just pick from any of them. And importantly, every stamp has a timestamp. And then we'll talk a little bit further about these time interval and follow-on time. Don't worry about them just yet, but essentially we've just made a stamp. Within the application, there are many types of stamps. We have EOS stamps, QLab stamps. All that is saying is that this is a point in time that this type of thing, this lighting console, this sound application, it did something at this point in time. And then, yeah, and so we can start making different types of stamps. So the first one was a note stamp. We can make another one like this. The second type of stamp we can make is a Q stamp. And now this is the important one, specifically for like Tim uses Q stamps, I think, a lot when he time codes a Q list first, is using these to be able to kind of export, to be able to go into a console. So I can talk a little bit about that if you'd like. So Q stamps are a little bit different to note stamps in that they hold kind of uptime and downtime data as well as a Q label. So if I just make one, let's just say like house lights out. So the first number is the Q number, and then we've got the Q label, uptime, and then downtime. So I'm just using tab to move across them. You can do shift tab to go backwards. The whole kind of design around stamp is that you can kind of mainly keep your hands on the keyboard and start kind of working around them. So you can use up and down and then tabs into them. You can double click on them and it will select the label quickly. All of that kind of functionality is all there. Because the idea is that in real time, as you're recording the show, really you can kind of note take really quickly without kind of looking at stamp. And so if you can touch type, that's even better. But essentially you would keep your face at the, on the stage and then just touch type your notes without really looking at stamp. Now, the timestamp is really important because it's basically saying what happened at a very specific time. And when we start tying that into a video, that becomes really important because then you're saying, okay, this note that the lights are too dim, that happened at 1 minute into this video, which so happened to be when Q1 fired. one cool feature about stamp is that when does this timestamp actually be taken? So by default, if you were just to write some notes like too dark and then press enter, the timestamp is going to be taken then. As you can see, it's 1422, 1422. So that got taken as soon as I pressed enter. But some people want to say, okay, I want to make a timestamp now, and then they want to type it out and then put that onto the timeline. So to do that, all I did was press enter on an empty text field, and then that would just start logging the time and just keeping hold of that time until you've written the note. So it's either kind of pre or post the writing of the note. So that's an enter with a clear command line. To reset that, if you do want it to happen at the end, you can reset that by doing Control-R, or everything has a keyboard shortcut, but essentially it's reset the time. So you can just keep on pressing enter, like if I wanted it now, or if I wanted it now, or if I wanted it now. Essentially, I'm just resetting the time to take the note from that time and then apply that after I've written the note and then pressed enter. That's kind of important for the kind of doing it in a live context. Not so much if you're doing it a little bit pre or post. I should say that there's 3 points of using stamp, or that I've identified that you would use stamp in your current scenarios. Pre, present, and post-production, really. Pre being you're in rehearsals or you're using a rehearsal video and you want to come up with this cue sequence for the show, really. So let's put a bit of that together, and I can kind of show that. So let's say that I have a video recording. And so to put the video recording into stamp, what we need to do is identify when this video starts recording, or when does it start playing. Because we've got this real-time kind of timeline that goes endlessly forwards and backwards, we kind of need to kind of tie it to a single point in time and then tie all of our other notes around it. So to do that, we use a flag stamp. So you can easily just do new flag stamp, which is Control F. And you'll see that we've got this flag stamp here. Now, all we need to do now with the flag stamp is attach some media. So I actually have one of Tim's 6 videos. I use this one. And let's pretend that this is a rehearsal recording of of them rehearsing in a rehearsal studio or something like that. It's not got all the lighting in it. What we're going to do now is just play this rehearsal, and we're going to start identifying points throughout the video when we want to start making cues. So instead of using a note stamp here, we're going to use a cue stamp, because cue stamps can be exported to desks, to EOS, Grandame, HOG4. And it kind of means that you can write out your cue sheet in here and then export it, and it will all be time coded for you when you go to the lighting desk, really. If you wanted to time code it, you don't necessarily need to export the time code at the same time. So if we want to change this command line or command palette to make cue stamps, we just need to change the stamp type to cue. You can actually type in like /note or /cue. That's just a quick way of changing what the command palette does. You could have done /flag, and that would have made it into a flag stamp mode, as it were. But we're going to be in cue stamp mode. So at the moment now, we're going to make cue stamps, which essentially means we're going to start making a cue list. Now, if I start playing the video, I can click play here. This is just going to start playing the video. Oh, and I should turn the video down because there's time code in that. So as I'm making cue stamps, what you would usually do is figure out the shortcut for a cue is Command Q, and then you would use that shortcut to just quickly make some cues. So let's try that again. If we just run the video, and you would say, okay, at this point, the lights are fading, so we want to cue there. Does a light come on? Somewhere soon? Or maybe there's a flicker there. Lights go out, light comes on. Maybe it follows spots for, maybe it moves, pans down stage, fades out, and then there's a blackout. So here we've just made a queuing sequence. With cue stamps, we can see we've got seven cues. They don't have a label. They did auto number for us, so they just went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then they didn't get given any times, really. All of these kind of defaults that go into a cue stamp can be changed in the preferences. So if you come here, so that was up at the top, and then preferences, auto number, new cue stamps with increments of 1. That's why they did 1, 2, 3. And then cue stamp defaults are just 0 and 0. Essentially, it's uptime and downtime. I never really put I don't tell you that they're uptime and downtime, because in theory, these cue stamps could be used for any department and not necessarily for a lighting desk. So for instance, I could in the future export this cue list to a sound application like QLab, and then maybe those up and down times relate to something else in QLab, which is why I don't do that. But if you're using this for lighting purposes and exporting for a lighting desk, which you guys probably will be doing, just think of it as uptime and downtime. Another thing while you're in this screen to be aware of is this command palette: pause media when editing and resume media on creation of new stamp. That's really cool, and I will talk a little bit about that in a second. So you've got this video recording that you can start playing back, and you've made your cues. Now you can kind of identify what's happening in the video by what we call leading. Leading essentially means that you are leading the video to a specific point in time. It needs to be toggled on, and by default it usually is turned on, but just make sure that it's turned on up there, which basically means that if you click on a stamp, it will lead the media to that point in time that you made that stamp. So as you can see, as I'm clicking around, it's moving the video to that point in time. That's a little bit different to, that's leading essentially. There is another type of leading which is called connection leading, but we will talk about that a little bit later on when we start dealing with connections. But essentially in all instances, leading is just the process of leading something to a point in time, really. And in this instance, you're leading the video to 4 seconds and 28 milliseconds kind of thing. Okay, so we've made some cue stamps, and let's pretend that this is perfect and we don't need to edit them. If we want to then export this to sorry, I'm just looking at Jack Wills. If I had stamped LX cues 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 4 was actually called 3.5 on the desk, will it shift the following cue numbers automatically? So it doesn't. We're not tying this to the lighting desk. This is kind of pre-programming anything into the lighting desk. This is like a designer working on rehearsals, and they're just blocking out some cues that they want to happen in the show, or they're listening to a piece of music and they just say, I want a cue here, 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 and here. So if the lighting cue is different in the lighting desk, you're saying if it's 3.5 rather than 4, in that instance, it wouldn't ever be anything because you wouldn't have set up the lighting cue yet. And what we're going to do is just import all of this data as an ASCII file into the lighting desk. And then it's just going to create a new show file. And then potentially then that would be imported into an EOS show file for you to do what you want with. Does that answer your question? There are kind of features where you can renumber stuff. Yep, Tim's just answering. You can renumber cues, I believe. I forget where I did it. Yeah, so you can renumber selected cues. So I could say, I want to renumber this, start at 10, increment by 1, and then we've renumbered our cues. So let's say that we've got this whole time-coded queuing. Let's say that this this song is all time-coded, and we're really happy with these 6 queues. What we then do is come to File and then Export, and then let's just do EOS family because I've got an EOS desk set up. This is just going to ask me, what exact settings do you want to have from that export. So the first one is the stamp field, basically meaning the label here. What do you want that to be exported? What part of that do you want to then tie to the EOS field? So essentially, at the moment, they're all empty. So if I chose the Q stamp label, that wouldn't. I'd love to be able to set it to only record queues as odd numbers. Good feature. I'll write that down. Joseph. Okay. So yeah, a lot of this is just how you want to export that data. At the moment, like the labels are all empty. So whether I choose Q stamp label or just leave it empty, it'll do the same thing. So I will tick stamp time interval, which essentially is this column here, which basically means like that's the time code. The time interval is the track started at 00, and the time interval is where that timestamp sits in relation to that starting time code. And then if I want that time interval, then where do I actually want to tie it to on the Q stamp? On the EOS queue. In this instance, let's just put it onto the label, but you could put it onto the queue note if you wanted to in EOS. You may have put in some specific times for each queue in stamp, so you could just say use them. But if you just want to default them all to say like 3, 5, that's uptime and downtime, then you can put that in there, and that's just going to make them all 3 up, 5 down. Doesn't matter what you put in there. Event list type, this is just saying, is it MIDI or is it linear time code? And then we've got the frame rates. So let's just keep them as normal. A lot of people kind of ask tracks, if you're doing time code, you don't necessarily want every single track to start at 00. So that's what this offset is. And it's basically saying, where do you want this flag, where do you want this sequence to start at in terms of time code? So if I just want it to be 1 hour, then I'd just type in 1 hour there. That's all that is really. And if you were to export multiple flag stamps being songs or just queuing sequences, time code sequences, you would probably change all of these to be an hour apart, so that you've got a fully time coded show up and running really. So if I just export this, I'll just put it onto, I'll put it onto the desktop, put it as that. And so this is just an ASCII file. This is just a standard format for importing show files really into Lighting Desks. So I'm just going to come to EOS now. Let's come to this one here. Let me just make sure I've saved this show file. Sorry, save as desktop. So EOS's import essentially is just like start a new show file. And what we're going to do here is we're going to import, so file, import, and then there is an option here to just do a stamp. If I'm honest, all of these are pretty much the same. You could import it like this, you could import it like this. Essentially the import, most of these, other than CSV, because that is clearly importing a CSV file, we're just importing an ASCII file here. Just because I work for ETC, I managed to get myself on the desk. But essentially, we just want to import a EOS file, an ASCII file, into the desk, and then if I import that, we can then see that we've got the queue list. So if I just tidied this all up, in fact, I'll just open up a new PSD. We can see that we've got the 10 queues, the 6 queues, starting at 10, which was like our stamp file. Here we can compare them if we want. It took the 3 and 5, so that took the the default times. We applied it to the note. I accidentally didn't put it onto the label, I guess. So we could see that if we added notes to the, display the notes, we can see Q1/1. Does that exist? Oh, so it's 10. We can see that we've got the Q note, which is basically saying the time code that you wanted that to be. So we can see that it's this time interval here. And then the events list, if I go to event list, which is show control, we can see now we've got the events list. It made it as MIDI type. We've got the frames per second. It would have applied the first time, with the offsets, and it would have sorted all of this if I set an offset. But because everything was just starting at 0, 0, then that's all there. I also calculate the last time for you, which doesn't necessarily need to be put into EOS, but I work out that this audio track was 30 minutes long, and it should stop here. Also, your cues are, stop here. So that's when you should stop receiving MIDI, really, like that. Let me just have a look at some questions. Agma, I don't know who Agma are, but great. You could perhaps just do increments as 2. Yeah, Trent, you could do that. I think also it would be cool to do odds, evens. You can do 0.1s if you wanted to like increment them by it's just a float value. I believe you can set offsets in the renumber function of the default number setting. Yes, you can. I gave that a go, but it doesn't work quite as hoped. All right, Joseph, we'll talk more about what you want if it doesn't do what you want. Yeah, Bridget, I try not to get involved with unions at all. I'm sad if they won't let you use it, but unfortunately, that's a battle I can't really fight. Could you export the queue list into a CSV or text file itself to build queue lists for SMs? You could. My argument for that is, what are they looking at in terms of, like, a CSV isn't a nice file to look at. And, are you putting it into Excel? My argument would be I would prefer the SMs to be looking at stamp. And basically you just give them a stamp file and look at that, because then you're getting the video, the stage managers being able to look at that, and they'll be able to kind of work out with the video, where their cues sit. There has been some talk within the American unions to allow for more filming of rehearsals for the purpose of reduced number of people in the room. That's a good side. Rick draws a good point. I've had quite a few people say, rehearsals, we're not allowed to film, so we couldn't use this. It really depends on your situation. I know that a lot of companies now are getting more into filming rehearsals, and specifically the tech rehearsals. So hopefully it's becoming more of a thing. A lot of the time, I have very few of the recordings. I think Tim kindly gave me the 6 one to have a look at, but as far as the kind of video recording, it rarely ever gets out into the wild, because it's usually just on the lighting designer's computer, or they'll put it into a Dropbox. And so really it is only for professional use in that case. Can you import event information from a console in case you want to edit? You can, and I've thought about this. I've never really, I could do that, and I would essentially have to then import it and say, okay, the first time that I import it, the import is taking this real time right now. There's a lot of kind of thought that needs to be put into, what time am I taking? When am I time stamping stuff? And if you were to import, where you getting your real time, where you actually positioning that stuff onto the timeline is a little bit confusing. I've also never actually had anyone kind of want to do it that way. And if I did want it to go that way, I would rather do a syncing up of the console and stamp, rather than importing and exporting files back and forth. I would rather it just be an OSC command back and forth between EOS and Stamp, which at the moment it can't, because that's one of the very few parts of the desk that you can't OSC into is the event list. But I have had talks with Chris to try and get that in. So, you know, as soon as it does, then if I'm honest, as soon as I get that OSC event list into the EOS, I probably won't even, like, I'll keep it in, but this export option for EOS will become irrelevant as soon as I can get a bi-directional communication with the desk. It'll be like, you're just going to be keeping in sync with them. For the video, do you need this recorded first and then inserted into Stamp, or can you do this live through a camera? You can do it live, Jason, through a camera. So as I said, there are kind of 3 different situations when you use Stamp. The first being rehearsals or pre-production, which is what we've just done now. The second of which is present production, which is basically you're in a tech rehearsal, you've got all of this complicated stuff going on, and then you want to be able to log it live and make notes at the same time. So let's show you a bit of that. I am going to load up a show file so that we've got something to play with. Let's go into here. Let's go into here. I think I made a snapshot. I did. Okay, so there's not much to worry about for EOS. I've just got 10 cues or so just for this show. Let's just start a new Stamp file because why not? So at the moment, you've been working in what's called preview mode, which is this icon here, really. So much like our consoles have a kind of live blind, I have a preview and live kind of scenario. So when you make a flag stamp and you attach it to a piece of media and start dealing with it, you're working in a very kind of preview kind of centric option. We're going to be working in a live option, which basically means that we can start picking out a video source and an audio source and then start recording that. And then start logging events and all of that kind of thing. So the first thing that you will need to do with Stamp is specify where you want your recorded media to sit. So if I go to the preferences, you'll find this media folder, and it's going to say save movie recordings to a certain folder and save audio recordings to a certain folder. What I do generally is on a new show file, on a new show, create a new folder on your desktop or wherever, and then just specify, you know, the video folder, the audio folder. If I'm honest, the majority of the stuff is just going to be video, and just put them into there. So I've just specified they're my 2 folders. It will allow you to set up all of this stuff, but then as soon as you press record, it will basically complain at you and say, hey, you haven't actually specified where you want your videos to go. So do make sure that you set that up in preferences. If you hit media, then you just need to choose it here. That is good. So essentially, Stamp can take in one video source and one audio source at the same time. It unites them together and makes a movie file out of them. A lot of people, like Andy Voller this morning was saying, a lot of the questions are just like, what cameras work? What can I use for a video source? Basically, if it's DVC compliant, it will work on a large majority of macOS, and it will understand the USB codes for that. So essentially, look for DVC compliant on your cameras. It uses AV Foundation as the back end, which is basically used by Final Cut and all of Apple's kind of video implementation. So I generally, as a rough round kind of thing, say if it works for them, then it should work for Stamp. A large majority of people are using Blackmagic mini recorders, and then they take a video, like a HDMI from a camera, into the Blackmagic mini recorder, and then that works. One thing that I have been using, Stamp also allows you to screen capture if you wanted to. Surprisingly, that's quite useful for things like if I want to then, like, sometimes I've wanted to make recordings of my own stuff. You know, maybe like I'm recording myself doing demos of Stamp, and I've just screen captured myself working on it, and then I'll annotate my own kind of screen to say, hey, at this point I should talk about this. So we can do screen capture, and then it will ask you which screen you want to use. You can also do your iPhone if your iPhone is plugged in. If you use the iPhone when it's plugged in via USB, it's just a screen recording of your iPhone. Like, you will be able to just see this screen here, and you'll see all of the kind of dialogue that comes up with Apple. One thing that I have very, very recently come across, well, I've been on beta for them for a while, which is this application called Camo, or it's by a company called Reincubate, and it allows you to use your cameras on your iPhone. It's pretty cheap. It's like £30 for the professional version, which basically means that you don't get the watermark on it. It comes with a desktop application which looks like this, and then that just allows you to kind of take off the watermark, which presents itself in the bottom right hand corner there. It allows you to kind of edit all of the functionality of your cameras. So this is a really kind of cheap way of using the cameras that are on your phones, which are generally very good and very expensive anyway. You may as well just get a little tripod for your iPhone or iPad and use that if you can, in those situations that you just want a quick and dirty recording, although this is less dirty because it's an iPhone camera. So yeah, Reincubate Camo is wicked. Have a look at that. Emma Davis is saying, so many options. Is it possible to add more than one recorded view? Not at the moment, but there is definitely conversations about how we could do that. When you start bringing in multiple video at the same time, there's a lot more kind of, which video are you targeting to? As I said, like, you can have multiple videos and flag stamps in a stamp file. And so it's all about like, which flag stamp am I dealing with at this one point in time? I will come a little bit more to that later on, I think, hopefully. And hopefully Tim can help me a little bit, because Tim's done a lot of time code for 6, I believe. So he'll kind of maybe talk about like how he broke that up into sections or songs. But there is a lot of kind of, I've had a lot of discussions on working out, like, can we get NDI, which is a video over Ethernet, into there? Essentially, you can get lots of different plugins and different ways to get content, video content into there. And then you can also get a decent audio content from the Sound Desk. Just remember that in all instances, when you are bringing in video and audio from different sources, that there may be a delay between the two. Like, if they're not coming from the same position, like if they're not coming from the same source, you may get a lag if it's going through a Sound Desk and it's being routed through all of their kind of stuff to then get to you. Like, it may be a minor second out or something like that. So do test that stuff out beforehand. There's nothing at the moment in Stamp to kind of modify that to allow you to kind of realign the audio and video up. But there's nothing saying that you can't just bring that into like Final Cut and just like change them and then re-export that video. One thing I would say about the video is that when you record a piece of video, Stamp doesn't actually ever edit that video or change its content in any way. All it is gaining the sources, getting the video, getting the audio, and then just making a video file. So when you were to like add a trim to the video, let's just add this one again. If you add some trim, let's say that we don't want the video to start there, we want it to start here. That's just adding trim, and it's recalculating all of the stuff, but the underlying video is never changed. And really that's to kind of keep kind of a bit of security, rather than, someone accidentally editing this video and then none of the rest of the production can see what happened prior to 25 minutes in. Essentially, you've got this video recording, and it doesn't change no matter what you set the trim or out points. This is a game changer. Great, good to hear. Okay, so this is my first theatre set here. As you can see, it's a 3+ years theatre set that I bought from Amazon. This is my production of The Three Little Pigs. So let's try and, well, no, that's not actually the one I want to show. I also have another set that actually uses the better set, which is this one here. And this is a production of Little Red Riding Hood. And we have it linked to a lighting desk here. So if I just run through the cues, we can see here that the video will change, depending on the cue that's in. And yes, that is a pixel wall at the back with 512 little LEDs. So we can do some pixel magic. Now, we've got a video recording. We've specified where we want this video to be recorded into. We've said what video source we want it to be. You can change all of these settings. I rarely do, but basically I just query the camera, hey, what options are available with this, and then present that to the user. You can flip it. That's also a useful one. If you're using a USB camera, sometimes they automatically will flip it so that they're the right way around for a webcam kind of thing. So you can flip that. There's also a feature to be able to favorite cameras. So whenever you open up a new show file, it will allow you to, it will automatically pick this video source if it can see it. And so you don't have to keep on picking the video source. So once that's all happy, we can then just click record, and then we're starting to record some video. So as soon as you see that timer, video is being recorded and the show is being recorded. I can run some cues here. So now we're going to 3. And then at this point in time, like if I was running a show and we've now come into Act 1, I can say, okay, well, this cue is too bright. And that's great. And then I can move on and go to some other cues. Oh yeah, that was my blackout. Okay, the blackout, there was some weird thing. Essentially, like the lighting designer would just watch the show and be going, this is a weird thing that's happening here. We need to look at this cue. We need to look at this moment. Everything's too bright. It's too blue. All of those kind of comments that they would put into a notebook. The hope is that you would write it down into this, this bit here and just get it stamped onto the timeline. And then when you're happy with the video recording, stop recording. It's made a flag stamp. It's automatically attached to the video. And then all we need to do now is just go into preview mode. We just make sure that we're targeted to the flag stamp. And then we can then, with leading turned on, say, okay, it's too bright. What did I mean by that? Okay, at this moment in time, 20 seconds on, I said it was too bright. Yeah, I agree. It is too bright. What can I do about that? And then at this point in time, usually your designer wants to know what cue were you in. And that's where we start coming into like connections. And connecting this so it starts logging, what cues are fired when. Is everyone with me so far? Yep, it's just combines the 4 cameras into one. Okay, yep. Oh, I think Alex is talking about, yeah, you could use like OBS to get like different video streams into a single video stream, and then you could pump that video stream into Stamp to be able to do that, which is probably a better way of doing it. Like I would have to like develop my own kind of specific kind of video editing suite to be able to kind of put that all in, when really what I want to be doing is talking to the manufacturers to get as much information into Stamp as possible. Like a large amount of my work is talking to manufacturers to say, hey, you've just brought out a lighting desk. I want to log when you do stuff, for then my users can start doing stuff. Okay, so now we want to start talking about connections. Connections is found in this tab to the right. I actually really briefly, I didn't even talk about it, but there are kind of 3 sections to the application. The top menu bar, or the toolbar, I should say, and then we have the media kind of tab that comes in from the top. We have the utilities coming in from the right, and then in the media tab, we have this media inspector that just comes on the left there. So what you can do is, you can run it like this if you've just got your media sources already kind of set up and you just want to have the full screen. You can even like make it really large to see everything. And then you can just kind of flip between live and preview like that. We're going to start dealing with connections. So to do that, essentially there are 3 options at the top of this inspector or utilities. You want to hit the one that's got the 3 balls. It's trying to signify that it's connections. And then down here, if you click the plus, it's going to ask you what type of connection do you want to make. I would say this is about to change in the next version. I was working on it last night, but essentially you can make connections. A connection looks like this. This is just default connection. You can then double click on it and it will give you this option. So this is actually the bit that's going to change, mainly because with connections, with like lighting desks and sound desks, they all do really complicated things, and every single connection is like individual. Like a lot of kind of communication has gone in with ETC to try and get this like exactly, the least amount of things that you need to be able to provide for me to be able to connect with it. And a lot of this is changing. Also, like this dynamically changes, and it's not scalable in terms of I want to be talking to Dan Murphin to get his app Lightstrike into here, and all of those kind of applications that do stuff with the rig. And so this part here will become a little bit different, but essentially we're making a connection. We're going to make a connection to an EOS desk, but the same kind of runs true in terms of you could just pick a Figure 53 QLab and you would just need to put in the options. So the idea is that EOS is going to send us information about what it's doing. It does this via OSC because EOS has a really good OSC implementation. There are essentially 2 ways that you can get OSC from EOS. You don't really need to worry too much about this as a developer, as an associate, but like as a developer or anyone interested, it's UDP or TCP. We're just going to do TCP together because it's easier and there's less to worry about. And that's what default an EOS connection will use. Something I've always wanted to use when getting timing, especially on dance. Is there an iPod app remote we can use roaming around to make notes? Ooh, if you go to Stamp's Slack page, which if you've downloaded it, you probably got an email from me to say, hey, welcome, here's the Slack channel. There is a channel in there called Mantis, Project Mantis, which was basically me building a remote for Stamp. And so there is definitely there is the ability to make notes on your mobile phone. And I can talk a little bit about that later. But yeah, that is a large amount of what I'm doing at the moment, is getting multiple people to make notes on the same timeline. And a large amount of work of that is building iPad and iOS remote, like an app for them to be able to kind of integrate into Stamp. So we've got this EOS connection. We want to change this to be the IP address of our console. So 101.93.101. One thing to be aware of for if you're connecting to EPC's EOS family desks, this IP address needs to be the primary console. You are able to connect to any console, but only the primary will give you its implicit messages, such as, hey, I fired a queue. So just make sure that that's the primary console. It is important to know that there is a difference in OSC versions, 1.0 or 1.1. Essentially, if you can use 1.1 because it's better, but you may not have your desk set up as that version. I believe I've got it as 1.1. The other thing that you can set up is, while we're talking about 1.1, I may as well, should I show you? I'll show you anyway. If you don't know where it is in EOS, Let me just exit here. In EOS, in the shell, you come here, you come to network, you scroll down, and it will say OSC, and it will say TCP format for OSC 1.0. You just need to change that. So you packet length header, or PLH as I call it, or slip, or that you don't need to worry about them. But there's just two different versions. You need to make sure that your desk and the console are in line with each other. I'm going to show you what happens if you try and connect to one with the wrong packet format. So don't worry about this. I am going to use 1.1 here, and I'm actually connecting to my primary console, which is next to me, and I'm actually running as a backup on this, so I don't need to worry about that. So that's fine. Thank you, Ben, for putting that link in. So yeah, so we've got a connection here. We've set it all up. I should have saved that. 93.101. We're going to do that. Now, I said what happens. Let's do what happens if you connect to a desk and you do the wrong stuff. If I just go to this tab, the best thing to look at is in diagnostics in your EOS. Essentially, just clear all of that. And then if I just actually type in my IP address, 101.130.101, and try and connect. It will allow me to connect to it. What did I do? Yeah, it will try and connect to it, but you'll get this corrupt packet size is exceeding. So if you ever get this packet corrupt, you know, I can't connect, I'm trying to connect, and then there's a corrupt packet thing, and specifically Stamp doesn't give you this connected, it's because of that version number of TCP. That's what happens if you do that. So if I then connect to the right desk with the right format, I will connect, and that's connected successfully. Because I'm on the backup, I'm not actually getting all the network information from the primary console, so I won't worry about that, but it would just say connected successfully, and we can move on with our lives. So if I then start, you know, I have this connection, I'm connected. If I then start firing queues, then you can see that I'm starting to get logged events in my show. So then I can start running the show and start running things like that. And then I can just start logging the whole show, really, which is great. In fact, I'm just going to start the blackout, and I'm going to run this queue list, and I'm actually just going to start recording. And then what would happen is that I'm recording this show, and I'm in live, I'm in the preset, and I would say, you know, I'm going to make some notes here. So Act 1, Scene 1, we're in this queue. This queue is just fired. In fact, I could just get rid of all of this stuff here. And I could say, okay, that swirl there at the back of the stage, that's weird. I'm not sure about that. House lights up, too fast. That note actually applied to the one above, so I should put it in there. Oh, now here's a point. I'm actually getting two fires here, and this isn't a networking issue. This is because I have two queue lists running on my desk, mainly so that I could run through queue list 1, and then when I wanted to automate it, I just get, you know, I just run queue list 2. So in Stamp, I can specify what lists I want to actually listen to rather than every queue list. So let's just say I only want to listen to queue list 1. And let's just start that whole process again. Let's stop recording. Just get rid of all of that. So let's start recording. Let's run the show. Okay. So we're running the show. We're in preset. You know, I could say something like 2 blue. I think I put like 10 seconds between each queue. Okay, we've got Act 1, Scene 1. The swirl is still too weird. Like at some point I really should change that. House lights up, again, too fast. And you would just run the show, like this, making notes, logging the events. I also have QLab running, so I could actually get QLab into the equation. Just get that into the play. That, just connect QLab. So there we've got QLab's just fired a queue. It's fired another queue. We're still in the blackout. And I could say like, the lighting should go with sound here. And then let's just fire another queue. So that's essentially what would happen in a text scenario. You would set up your recording, you'd set up your sources, start recording. Sorry, before starting the recording, get all your connections. And then you would connect them all, start recording, and then just start logging the events. And then what that means is that you can come to preview. We can then select our flag stamp. At the moment, we've only got one, so it doesn't matter. And then we can say, okay, I've got this lighting note here. The light should go with sound. That's the sound note. But here we said that it was too fast. So with leading turned on, I could click on that and say, hey, this queue came up too fast. What queue was it? It was Q3. I could come here and say, okay, Q3, yeah, it's 1 second. And then you would change Q3 to be a different time. So the idea around Stamp is really about kind of logging notes and taking those notes, but also kind of referencing them with a video recording, but more importantly, referencing them to input from multiple sources really, and kind of getting a more clearer picture. In terms of like the lighting should go with sound, well, this one here, it came 9 seconds after, so maybe we have a hang on this, and maybe we need to say that this needs to come 4 seconds after rather than 9 seconds after. These kind of times help you to work out follow-ons and hangs and kind of work out the time code that's needed. So follow-on time is essentially a follow-on on a desk in terms of it happens when the queue fires. I would love to give you a hang time, but the thing is I need to know how long the queue is. And at the moment, I don't retrieve queue information, nor does EOS give me that information from their queue fired message. You can get a little bit more information from queues. So if I double click on them, it will give you a detailed version of what happens in this, what this desk is, what EOS is giving me. So at the moment it's giving me an OSC message of this, and it's giving me a string value of blackout, which is the label. So a lot of the time I'm like in discussions with manufacturers to try and get as much information out of them. And for things like ETC's EOS, I probably will just retrieve their whole queue list and then start giving you times and say, okay, at this moment in time, Q5.1 fired, and it was at this time. In terms of it had an uptime, the downtime of this. A lot of that is to come in the future, which is why I'm kind of working on connections at the moment to allow for those kind of details, really. That is kind of it in a nutshell. Oh, here we go. Does it track fader pages or just queues? At the moment, it just tracks queues, but there's nothing to stop you tracking the OSC message if you know it. You can just set up an OSC connection, and then you can just kind of put in there the prefix of the fader command, and then you could start tracking that. You're not the first person to ask about that, so it may be something that I'll implement in terms of, I start logging fader queues if that's what you want. Can you split an hour-long rehearsal video into smaller chunks for time logging? Yeah, absolutely. So you can have multiple videos. So that's actually one of the kind of things that people get a little bit confused about, is that this whole timeline that we're looking at the moment, it's only referencing to one video, but we can make multiple recordings of this show all on the same timeline. So at the moment, I just started video recording again. I'm still connected. So I'm going to start getting cues firing, and we can see we're recording it. Let me just have another cue fire. Great. So if I then disconnect EOS so it stops. So here we can see that I've got 2 flag stamps. Now this just means that when I'm in preview mode, at the moment I'm targeted to this. Well, I'm actually targeted to the last one, but I can change which flag stamp I'm targeted to, which basically means change the time interval to reference to that video recording. If I then want to look at this second video, I just change the target to that, and then all of the times change dependent on that video recording. So here we can see that these ones sit, past that flag stamp, and then all of these, they don't really relate to this video recording because they're further back in time, so they're all minus. In this instance, these 2 are the important stamps, which basically means that if I select any of these, they don't change that video. That's also something that's come up, that people would like that video to change if I was to select one of these. And I'll probably be putting that in the next month or 2. But at the moment, it just selects these 2 stamps here. Hopefully that answers your question without having to re-export individual numbers. Can you split an hour-long rehearsal video into smaller chunks for time without having to re-export individual numbers in an editor to get new timings for the start of the track for NSM? Sorry if I've missed catching that bit. So the thing is that the whole export, file export to EOS console, I would only really ever do that one time at the beginning of the show, and then I would then do all of the edits within the EOS software. And then, because I generally kind of think that EOS software is it is its own database. It's telling you what is happening. And I don't necessarily agree with loads of different paperwork replicating stuff. So I kind of treat EOS as the source of truth. To then re-export, to then re-import, I would just say, if you're going to record this and then you say that, this second cue here, it came 2 seconds too early, I would then just tell my programmer, hey, this needs to be 2 seconds, add 2 seconds to this specific cue on the time code, rather than kind of working back and forth between Stamp and EOS in that respect. What is the easiest way to connect to MA2? Unfortunately, MA2 has no OSC implementation for MA2. MA3 does have an OSC implementation, but it's not very good. And really the only way to do it is via MIDI. And so you would set up a MIDI connection, and then you would have Grand MA output MIDI for every go that it does. You would set up a MIDI show control, or if you really wanted to do voice or that, and then you would start logging the goes via MIDI show control. So the MIDI is pretty powerful in terms of you can specify the device, the command formats, and all of that kind of stuff. You've also got your MIDI voice, so you can just start logging them, and then the eagle-eyed among you will see that you can also start receiving MIDI time code. I will show you a little bit about that, because it doesn't happen. I don't hear about it too much, but essentially Stamp can receive time code. It can receive MIDI time code. If I just set up a MIDI time code in QLab quickly, and if I just connect this up, it should pop up in Stamp. Essentially, all I've done here, QLab is just my MIDI source. So this is QLab, and I've just set up a MIDI source. As soon as, basically, there's 2 ways you can, if you have a USB MIDI driver or dongle, such as ETC's response MIDI, or you can just use any old USB MIDI dongle. You would see it in sources, but because I've not got one plugged up, you can act as a destination, which is essentially a virtual MIDI dongle, which basically means that if I connect that, QLab is going to see it and think, hey, you've got Stamp's got a MIDI input. So then I can start outputting MIDI, which basically means if I press go on that, I'm then going to make what's called a timecode stamp. A timecode stamp, I don't always record timecode coming in. All I do is record when I started receiving it, what was the time that I received it at, and what was the frame rate that I received it at. Which is really useful because that's essentially all you need. And then you would make a video, start this recording. You would run your cues. I'm probably not connected to EOS. So let's run some cues. And then let's stop that, and let's stop that. So then when you stop MIDI, it will, can you receive MIDI show control over Ethernet on the MA2? I believe you can because, I'm not too sure. I'm not that familiar with MA2 in terms of how they do timecode. I believe that Ethernet is not RTP MIDI. I think it's like MA MIDI. If it's RTP MIDI, Apple already have that. So if it's that, then it can just, it will see that as a MIDI source, Andy, but I'm not too sure. I've never really done any investigation, and I don't have an MA with me, but let me know. Will Stamp ever connect to X76? I would love to. I am really kind of manufacturer agnostic, and so I don't care. I work for ETC, but Stamp is like, doesn't care, and I will connect to anyone that will give me information. Yeah, it's really up to like, it's not necessarily like, will I or will Stamp ever? It's more like, does that manufacturer actually output the data that is useful for something like this? For things like, I've done a QLab connection, and that's all set up. QLab actually doesn't give me the information that I require. So there is a little bit of trickiness to get a stamp into QLab, but that's on a QLab level. It's just that they don't have implicit outputs. Essentially, what you want is a desk that when you do something, it to output something to say, I've done something. The big ones that actually do this are like Disguise, Media Servers, EOS does it, Hog does it, and the others, and MA does it with MIDI, which is great, but some manufacturers aren't that keen on doing it. And so a lot of my time is spent just requesting that they do. Is it possible to start a recording with a go trigger from a desk? You're not the first person to ask for that. And so with the remotes that I've been working on, there is essentially a backend API, OSC API, to allow you to control aspects of Stamp. So you will be able to output an OSC command to Stamp from EOS on a queue firing to say, hey, start recording if you're not recording already. So that is definitely going to be possible. I have thought about putting it actually in the connection here and just say, hey, if you see this queue firing, then start recording. Again, that's more reason why I'm changing this, because a lot of these kind of things that you're asking, they're starting to fill this screen up. Akvinda, I'm not quite sure what that means. Where was I? Time code. So I record the start time when I started receiving it, and I record when I stopped receiving it. That's less important. The starting recording, started receiving it is the important one. And that comes up in this offset section. So essentially, by default, a flag stamp always starts at 0, 0. Mainly because that's how most videos work, really. But in terms of like when you want to start dealing with like follow time code and you're receiving time code via MIDI, you actually want to know what that time code was at that point in time when you're running the show. And so what you would do is then receive the MIDI time code. With the flag stamp targeted, you would then change this to say offset by the time code. And you'll notice now that all of these time intervals got changed. They've got this little asterisk, and basically what it's saying is pretend that I am now using this time code rather than 00 as my time code. And so that should allow you to then take these time intervals here as the time code that you were receiving at that point in time when you fired cues or when you made notes, essentially. Great. I think we need to have some cat pictures in Slack. So is there any questions? That's in a nutshell all I really have to talk about in terms of stamp, in terms of present production. So we've done pre-production, which is rehearsals, creating a cue sheet. The next part is post-production. Post-production is essentially archiving a show, and you want to log all of this, and then you just want to wrap it up, and you just want to kind of give it to people, or you want to give it to your relighter and say, hey, it needs to look like this. But it also could be that you have done a show that evening. Maybe you're in a dress rehearsal, you've recorded the whole show, and maybe you're on the train home and you just want to start annotating those notes. Now, I said that stamp runs in real time always, but you can actually fake a lot of that real time and say, hey, don't actually make a stamp in real time. I want you to make a stamp as if I was at that point in time. A little bit confusing, but essentially, let's say here, this show here, starting, when did it start? Oh, no, I'll do the first one. This first show here, I want to start annotating. And so what you would do, this is post-production, you've got a video recording, you've logged all the cues, someone via a mobile has started making notes, great, but you want to say, okay, this cue here, I want to make some notes on because I remember that something happened. So what you would do is maybe play that scene, and the important thing here is that you want to make sure that this box here, media timestamp, is ticked on. And what that means is, if it's ticked on, that it won't use real time as its timestamp. It will use essentially whatever the flag stamp is plus whatever this media is, and timestamp it as if you were logging it at that point in time. So let's say that I'm running this, this video recording after the dress rehearsal, and I just want to make some notes, and I want to say this scary cave here is not that scary. And you can see now that I've input a stamp into the timeline, but it's not actually real time. I'm working back in time somewhere. And all the important thing is you need to make sure that this media timestamp is turned on. If I was to turn it off and just make a stamp, you can see that that goes to the end of the timeline, and it goes with real time like that. So that's post-production. We're annotating a recording back, back in time. Like that. And I will stop that. Tim's question went missing. He mentioned syncing with a video you get from stage management. Syncing with a video you get from stage management. So yeah, okay, let's say, well, I've kind of, let's start a new show file and say syncing with, oh, I know. So let's say that you don't have this video recording like this. And what usually happens, if I just get rid of all of these cues, tidy up some mess. Let's say you've recorded the whole show in terms of you've just recorded the cues firing from EOS, and you've maybe got the sound cues, and maybe someone's also made some notes in the cue list, but you've not actually got a video recording in here. What that means is that you can actually make a flag stamp, and you then position that flag stamp at the beginning of this timeline. So what I would do is create this flag stamp, but as you can see, it's then put it at the end. So the important thing is what you want to first do is position this flag stamp at the beginning of the whole list. So just take a note of 15:06:46. So what you can do is edit the flag stamp's timestamp to a time, and then what was it, 15? Oh, I can't remember now. 15:06:46. 15:06, and then you just want it, somewhere in front of all of the other stamps. So you can see that got moved up. All editable stamps are able to be shifted around. Their time stamp can be moved, such as I can move, this note forward and backwards in time. I actually move it a bit further. You can see now it's on the other side of the cue. Editable stamps are different from connection stamps. Connection stamps can't be moved because they're logging a very specific point in time. Whereas a note stamp is, that can be shifted around if you want. A flag stamp is an editable stamp, and that can be shifted. When they have been shifted from their very original first created time, you get these little arrows to say, hey, this got moved back in time, or this one got moved forwards in time. You can change them back to whatever they were to created time. And there's lots of kind of adjustments of like moving them forwards and backwards. When I was just moving that, to blue note, I was actually just doing the keyboard shortcut for it just stamped forwards in time by a second. These kind of seconds and frames, they can also be changed in preferences. If you only want to nudge cues back and forth by a certain amount of time, or nudge notes, you come here and you say, okay, adjust them by 1 second, or 0.1 of a second, or adjust by a frame, at a certain point in time. So yeah, resyncing up this video that you've got from a resyncing this video that you've got from a stage manager, we positioned a flag stamp at the top of the show. And then what we need to do is just attach the media to it. So let's come here, and it was in the videos, and then let's say that it's this video recording here. Oh, that's not very good. Ignore that. So then we've got this video recording. We're going to attach this video here like that. So we've attached the video, but the video is not in sync with all of the cues because we literally just slammed it in any old time, and it's definitely wrong. There's a feature called Align Targeted Flag Stamp to Selected Stamp, which is, where is it? Media? Nope, I always forget. Edit, and then it is Align Targeted Flag Stamp. So what this means is you need to pick a stamp that you know exactly where it sits in the video. A good one to do is like a snap blackout. So let's say that I knew exactly where Q 5.1 sits in this show file. The important thing to do is make sure that leading is turned off. After this, like select the stamp and then turn everything off so your video doesn't start moving around. And then what you want to do is you want to find that blackout in your video recording. So let's say that 5.1 is there. That's the blackout. Let's say that I knew that, within this video, this is Q 5.1. I'm dead sure of that. So then what you would do is make sure that Q 5.1 is selected, and then align targeted flag stamp to the selected stamp. And then that will nudge this flag stamp up to where it needs to be, or down, depending. And then it means that this now lines up so that if you run this whole cue sequence, the flag stamp is in line with all of your cues. So that's linking up all of the cues in relation to a video exported. So a lot of the time that happens, like maybe you've got a video recording from video source on the circle front and it's completely removed from stamp. That would be how you get that video and put it in line with all of these logged stamps. Any other questions? None so far. So that's about it, really, in terms of...
See, you were worried you'd only have 20 minutes of things to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, everyone seems really interested and excited by that. Is there any more questions, anyone you want to type quick before we say goodbye to Sam Smallman? Was there anything else, Sam, that you would like to add, or where Stamp might go in the future?
Stamp for the future is all about multiple users collaborating.
Great.
That's like, it started... I always say it started from being sat in the production notes after a production. And it would always be that multiple people would be like, hey, when that actor comes down stage, they're too dark. And everyone would frantically go, oh, what cue am I in? And the stage manager would frantically look through the DSM book. pick out the cue and then all that. The whole design about it was that it's to identify those pivotal points in time and to make it really quick about that. And so really it's taken a while to get to that point, especially because at the moment only it's really used by one department at a time. And we're seeing a lot of multiple departments using it, but they're using it individually. And what I would like to see is multiple users, directors, designers, programmers, everyone collaborating in the single timeline. And then those sessions when you're in production notes, you don't have to say, hey, what queue was I in? Stamp's telling you. And you don't actually, like a lot of designers will have the iPad sat, resting on one knee and their notebook on the other knee, and they'll be kind of figuring out what queue they were in, to write that note against. Stamp alleviates the need to even care about what queue you're in. And it's giving you more detail in terms of you were in that queue, but you were also 20 seconds into that queue when you made this note. So you don't need to kind of identify those queue numbers until you actually really need them, at the note session the next day. All you actually want to be doing is too dark at this point in time. And so, yeah, it's to get multiple users doing that really would be my dream. You might be Smallman, but you have big ideas. If you buy it, do you get free updates? Yeah, so that's a new thing. That's something I'm doing a lot of work on at the moment, is redoing the licensing. It'll be, at the moment, you have had free updates forever since you bought it, which is great, but not really good for me financially. And so what I would like to do is that you buy Stamp for £99, you keep that forever, and it's great. It will always work. And then what you'll do is you'll get a year's version, a year of updates, and then you'll just subscribe to another year of updates. And that will be like 60 odd quid just for another year of updates. I think that's more fairer for you guys, and it keeps the cost quite low. And it also pushes me to actually give you content within that year. So yeah. Mike Wood. Mike Wood, actually, he's been kind of instrumental in a couple of features. He's done a really kind of good demo on his website about it. So that's always really good. He wants a lot of audio features. Like he wants to be able to bring in cans and different audio feeds into the same timeline. Like same audio, same video and audio source. So that's what he's asking for. Which is definitely going to come at some point, because a lot of sound designers want that as well. Talking about notes on the train, could you make a way of allowing creation of a priority list so that you can quickly jump through your notes list to make sure you get those 12 cues that you really want to hit? That was essentially why we have cue colors. Stamp colors. You can change these to be different ones so that, everything is, all the notes that I make now are going to be yellow. You can change this up here. So you can say entries, color, and just change it to the 4 colors. Why I chose those 4 colors, I have no idea, but I did. Generally speaking, a lot of note-taking applications try and stay away from kind of numbering priority, because it always gets a little bit confusing about which is higher priority and lower priority and how many do you need and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas I generally find, or a lot of research that I've done into it is like, if you just stick with kind of colors and like red is bad and green is good and yellow is whatever, then colors works well for you. I also would like to do it that connections automatically can be assigned a color, so that all EOS cues are green, or in this instance everything is green by default connection wise, but I'd like to change that. In terms of like searching, we have the search bar here that allows you to search for text, so you can search for blackout. There's also searches, essentially filters down, and then there's a feature called find, which allows you to find all the instances of blackout, and then you can just iterate over them. So if I just say, find me all the cue, act 1, find me all the instances of the time that I had a label saying act, then I can just go through those. There's also search and find has lots of kind of functionality in terms of you can change it so only show me the EOS queues, so /EOS, or always show me the notes, so you could /note. You can also really specify, so you could do /EOS /number is equal to 1, and it will only show me Q1 in this whole sequence. And you can use that same logic in the find, so that it's found one instance, and you can just do that. So find is kind of find me the instances and then jump to them, whereas search is like filter it down and only show me them, which kind of is the same as how like Finder works and stuff like that. Hopefully that answers your question. Is there a way to connect and say stamp VLAN to the lighting VLAN? Yeah, I would like to do more, and this is again why I'm doing more on connections. At the moment, the interface that you use is pretty. It listens out and doesn't actually specify the interface that you're using. But I would like to be able to specify the interface per connection, so allowing you to VLAN, so you have one interface on your lighting VLAN, and that just makes things a lot nicer. Jack Wills, don't be afraid to charge for updates. I won't be. I'll be charging you. The thing is that I don't really want to charge you guys £500 because that doesn't seem fair. Can you organize cues notes by color? Yeah, you can. You can just oh, you mean like organize in kind of color order? No, not necessarily, because no, you can't ever change the order in which these stamps are. They are always in time stamped, in forwards and backwards in a timeline. So they will always stay true to this timestamp, unfortunately. But what you can do is just say, okay, what notes have I got? /notes. Okay, these are great. You can, I believe, do /red, and then you've got all your notes, all your red cues. There you are. So you can, yeah, chain up all of those kind of search commands to be able to do that stuff.
Well, guys, we've made a stamp channel in the ALD workspace on Slack. So if you have any more questions for Sam, you can type them in there, maybe. But really, thank you, Sam, for walking us through that. It is a brilliant piece of software. I certainly couldn't have done what we've done on 6 without using that to get all the time code into the desk and stuff like that. It's totally brilliant. And also absolutely brilliant for just taking an archive recording of the show as well. It's stunning. So thank you very much. And like I said, if you have more questions for Sam, just head over to the Slack channel on the workspace. But we'll stop broadcasting for 20 minutes. We have Hugh Vanstone on at 4 p.m. and we're going to talk about his life and his time with Andy Bridge. So thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. I'll see you later.